Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Barry, for your wonderful introduction. It's an honour for me to stand here today to address the Bruges Group, an organisation that was established to promote the values that Margaret Thatcher spoke about in her speech in Bruges on the 20th of September 1988. And throughout my entire political career, from the moment I joined the Conservative Party at the age of 14, and from the moment I met Margaret Thatcher in person at the age of 16, at my first ever party conference in Brighton in 1982, from that very moment, I have dedicated my political career and my involvement in politics to working for the day that I can say that Britain is an independent and free nation once again. And I've been inspired in that, not only by Margaret Thatcher, but particularly by my very dear friend, my colleague, Sir Bill Cash, Companion of Honour. A man who has put everything aside for the interests of our country, to restore our democracy and freedom, and to unshackle ourselves from the European Union, which became an organisation strangling our democracy and taking away the freedoms and liberties that our forebears have fought for so long. But we achieved it. We achieved it through absolute determination, through a determination to stand up for the right values for our country, but to speak up in Parliament, as Bill has done over and over again, more than any other parliamentarian, ultimately leading, Barry has said, to that vote when Theresa May attempted on the third occasion to drive through this meaningful vote, which effectively, had it gone through, would have meant that we were not leaving the EU at all. We would have been half in, half out. It would have been Brexit in name only. 29 of us went through that lobby on 3 occasions to defeat, which would have been a betrayal of that referendum of 2016. And so I proudly stand with my friend Bill Cash and with all the others that fought to get a genuine Brexit. Now I say a genuine Brexit because although I do believe that the 2019 general election enabled us to deliver through Boris a genuine Brexit, there are still loose ends which need to be dealt with. And one of those loose ends, I'm afraid to say, is Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is a part of our cherished union, and I don't believe should be treated any differently than any other part of the United Kingdom. So that's unfinished business, which we must return to when, and hopefully soon, we see another Conservative government, which I truly hope will be a Conservative government, not just in name, but a Conservative government that will actually pursue the Conservative values and traditions and beliefs that we in this room all believe in. But ladies and gentlemen, the party is on a precipice, I have to say. We really are on a knife edge. Are we going to recover? Are we going to rebuild? Are we going to get back to the foundations of what conservatism is all about and win the next election? Or are we going to once again go into this mush of people wanting to be politicians for the sake of being in power rather than there for a purpose? I am there in politics for a purpose. I'm not there to just hold positions and titles and jobs and all the rest of it. Some, I'm afraid, are obsessed with this. I'm obsessed with doing the right thing for my country. It's love of country that should drive each and every one of us. And so, let us resolve to make 2024 like 1974. In 1974, we lost 2 general elections under the then leadership of Edward Heath. Say no more. In 1975, we elected a lady leader of our party, Margaret Thatcher, and she came in with a purpose. She didn't come in simply to be leader of a party. She came in to change our party, to restore our party back to government, and then set out to change Britain for the better. And she spent the next 4 to 5 years doing just that. So we had 4 to 5 years in opposition with a failing Labour government. And then we were returned to power in 1979. Margaret Thatcher, having spent that time working on new policies, new ideas for our country, setting up the CPS and looking at ideas for a new Conservative government and a radical plan to put Britain on the right track. And that is what she spent those 5 years doing. We've got to do the same again. We mustn't waste the next 4 to 5 years. We, ladies and gentlemen, have to come up with a plan of action to revitalise our party, regenerate our Conservative values, have a clear vision for our country, and in 5 years' time, in 2029, as Margaret Thatcher did in 1979, 50 years earlier, go back into government with a plan of action to change Britain for the better and restore our country to the great nation I believe it continues to be and will be in the future. But our party is at the start of this process. This is a long way to go. And as our previous speakers have spoken about, certainly Barry and Bill and others earlier today in this room, we need a leader that understands what needs to be done, a leader that actually speaks the truth and isn't afraid to challenge the establishment within our own party, but the establishment in our country overall. And there are too many people, and I've been a member of Parliament for 23 years, over 23 years, there are far too many people who don't seem prepared to do what's necessary to change Britain for the better. The status quo is always the easiest thing to go for. Cosy, sitting in a corner, cosily letting time pass by without actually grappling with the real issues we need to face. And so the next 5 years will, ladies and gentlemen, be make or break for our party. And therefore, the decision we make about who is our leader is actually going to be just as important as it was in 1975 when we elected Margaret Thatcher. There's only one person before that I see is giving us any hope of restoring our party, getting back into government, and then when we get back into government, actually doing things and making the changes we need. And that person, I believe, is Robert Jenrick, and I'm proud to stand with him and support him in this leadership election. But ladies and gentlemen, our party is a servant, must be a servant of our nation. The purpose of being in power is to be in power for a purpose, not to be in power for its own sake. At the next election, whereas I believe we can and must win that election, we can't afford a second term of a Labour government. Socialism is destructive. It's destructive in so many ways, to our economy, to our culture, destructive to our British way of life. Every Labour government has left our country in a far worse state than it found it. So we must ensure that the next 5 years are put to the best use to guarantee a Conservative victory. When I say a Conservative victory, I have to say I mean a Conservative with a capital C, but also with a small c. I don't know what the future holds. Our electoral system has thrown up an incredible result of this election. And we cannot deny that reform as a party have resonated with so many people who normally vote Conservative. So we cannot be arrogant. We cannot be arrogant and think to ourselves that the Conservative Party will just bounce back and will win again. That may not happen. So we have to be prepared to do whatever is necessary, putting our national interest first to ensure that this is a 5-year stint of a Labour government, and then we go back to restoring our country, restoring a Conservative government back into office which pursues Conservative policies and conservative values, and gets our country back on the right track, as Margaret Thatcher did 50 years before. So all of you have a part to play. All of us in our constituencies have a part to play. But ultimately, we have a duty to make this happen. There is only so much that we can tolerate as a country with socialists in power. The damage they do is immense to our democracy and our way of life. We're seeing only in 3 months what it means to have a Labour government. I want them out of office in 2029, conservative values, or we're going to be saddled with potentially decades of a divided right within our country and a Labour government governing for a very long time. And I give the example of Canada, how the Canadian Conservatives lost that election all those years ago, and they've had a party called Reform as well, which divided their votes, and that meant the Liberal Party of Canada, which is really pretty much a socialist left-wing party, they were in power for many years to come. We must avoid that calamity in our own country and bring the right of centre back together. By bringing the right of centre back together in whatever form that takes. That is our patriotic duty, to restore our country back to the governments, kind of governments we need to restore the democracy and the freedom that our party is always for and must always be about. And ladies and gentlemen, I know that Romford will be at the forefront of that battle as we look forward to restoring our party back to power in 5 years' time. I'd like to thank the group for the immense amount of work that's done over the last, coming up 40 years, in promoting the values of freedom and democracy and of an independent, sovereign nation state. But the work is not complete. There is much to do, so let's get on and do it. Thank you very much indeed.